29th with budget deliberations, night 2 in the Skinnico room of the town hall with roll call, please.
Councilor Legro. Here. Mayor Sakala.
Here.
Mr. Prasadi.
Here.
Councilor Hall.
Here.
Councilor Mangini.
Here.
Councilor Matthews. Here. And Councilor Pisner. Here. Deputy Mayor Santinella.
Here.
Councilor Thomas.
Here.
Councilor Ungary. Here. Councilor Zanoni.
Here.
11 members are present, none are absent.
Right, thank you. All right, so I don't have the agenda in front of me, but I'm pretty sure number 2 on the agenda is budget deliberations. So, again, Carol, for those people who are watching at home, Carol and John are virtual. And the rest of us are here because they are in session. So I figured we would start, quickly, Matt. What were you starting with? Oh, budget date. We'll start with that piece of information. And then we'll talk very quickly about the annex, and then I'm gonna throw it to John because he's got some info from the state side.
So, originally I had May 18th as the date for the budget adoption, but actually needs to be adopted on the 12th. It's 20 days after the public hearing, unless you schedule a public hearing again, then it gives a little bit more time. So that is an option if you want. So the 12th is the latest. We talked to leadership earlier today that we would schedule the 11th as the adoption date, which means next week we have two budget deliberations scheduled for the 6th and the 7th. So we're going to have to make those worthwhile, including tonight, so we can get this all done.
I'm sorry, June or May? What are we talking?
May
May.
11th.
May 11th is
Yeah.
the adoption?
It's gonna have to be because May 18th is too far. It's
Oh,
over
yeah.
20 days after the public hearing. So it'll be May 11th because that's a Monday instead of doing it on a Tuesday, which is the 12th.
All right, so we get another one, but
Yeah, usually the next couple of days.
yeah.
So because we have to have it within 20 days of the public hearing.
Yep.
And we had the public hearing the 22nd,
Second, yep.
22nd. So, the 18th is too late. So now we have to have a special meeting on the 11th of May, which is Monday. So, and we figure just in general, Mondays are mostly cleared from all of us. So, all right. Number 2 item is, I know we all talked, we had a really good conversation about the annex. And we discussed it, just so everybody knows, we discussed it in leadership today and, on board. Matt, is also suggesting that we just use fund balance for this year. It'll be on the agenda for Monday. We're gonna get it done. CIP sweep and all the funds that we're looking at right now, he's still reviewing, and we'll be able to use that regarding this budget that we're deliberating. So look for that to be on the agenda for Monday. So we can sort of take that off the table for this deliberation. All right, so John, I know you were at the Capitol. You said you had some info for us regarding budget, so if you would like to take it away.
So I think we're all hearing the same thing here, but assuming everything stays as is, we should be seeing an increase in our ECS funding of $1,019,672, which will be a permanent increase in our ECS funding going forward. Next, there will be a one-time additional aid to cities and towns. Enfield should receive $565,467. And again, just understand that that's my understanding of that is it is a one-time additional payment. And then there is an additional $300,000 that appears to have been approved from, I think we talked about the ambulance servicing to the prisons. It looks as though that is going to be in our run as well. So the budget meeting or session is supposed to be Saturday. The House will go in the morning, the Senate will go in the afternoon, and this should be done by then. And Carol, as I'm talking, are you hearing the same thing, or do you have something? Is that consistent with what you're hearing?
So we heard budget Monday because we're hearing they're not bringing us in until later on Saturday because of the funeral for the legislature. So we're going to be out early on Friday, and then because his wake is Friday, excuse me, and then later on Saturday because of the funeral Saturday morning. And so we're hearing budget Monday. The only other difference I have in the numbers, John, is I have the one-time fund at a higher number. I have it at 1.1 million. And then the ECS dollars that'll start next year, I have at the same number you have. So it's 1 million and some odd change. And that's going to add to their baseline here on in. So that's going to be a permanent bump in the ECS. But the money we're getting this year for the towns, are calling it kind of a tax relief, if you will. We're hearing like 1.1 million. So I'm hoping my number's right.
So for this purpose, it's somewhere between $565,000 and 1.1 million, but we'll know either Saturday or Monday.
Yeah. Let's
Wait,
hope for the higher number.
Wait, I thought, so let me just ask. So John, that what you were saying is though it's going to be an ECS increase starting after starting this next budget. But Carol, I thought you just said the one-time number is higher, but the ECS wouldn't kick in until the following budget? Is that what you're saying?
So this funding that's coming for us, this budget relief cycle is before, it's because so many towns have actually voted on their budget already. The money that they're allocating is like a one-time fund. And what they're saying is, and the language could change because this is the problem with the budget, right? We put in language and they're still negotiating the language. So what that initial 1.1 million they're saying is for tax relief. And it's supposed to come off your either mill rate or it can go into your reserves. But the following budget, which is what we're negotiating now, will be an increase in ECS money. I got to plug in, guys. I may lose you.
Okay, so I guess we'll just get clarification on that because I got a phone call from the Lamont office today and they said $1 million in ECS increase funding coming to Enfield. So I don't.
Yes, that is right.
So
That is right.
I heard a 565.
Right, so what John is saying, I thought.
It's not
Go ahead.
565. 565 is the one-time
At one time.
aid to municipalities. Listen,
Yeah, that's the number that John and I have different numbers for. So, yeah.
Right. But just remember, the ECS money is a permanent addition to ECS.
Yes.
So it's from here on out. So for
Yes.
next year, right, we are going to get that so for the budget that starts in Enfield on July 1st of this year, there will be an additional $1,019,672 in ECS funding. So therefore, on the Board of Ed's budget, sources of revenue, they are getting more revenue from ECS and should require less revenue from the town budget to get to the number that they have asked for,
Okay,
assuming
So-
everything
so-
else stays the
that's
same.
great news.
So we may have a difference on language there, so we'll get a clarification on the language. That may change a little bit Monday. So either way, we're getting money. That's the good news, and it's pretty significant. How it's allocated is the question at this point for this year, that town money.
Okay, yeah, because the phone call I got, it lined up with what John is saying. So we're gonna get, ECS will be increased, and if they are increased by $1 million, then that would be offset by then giving them their number of the ask for number.
Oh.
And then we'll decrease our amount down by that same whatever million. And then the additional funding that John and Carol are talking about, the 300,000 for mutual aid, and then the one-time tax break aid, which I think is the number that they have different. So, all right, that's good news regardless. All right, I like starting budget meetings with good news. Great job, guys. Thank you. Anything else on that before we?
No, it's other than the $300,000 is also a one-time, it's a one-time contribution. So,
Awesome.
okay.
That's great. Okay, so let's hang on to the ECS BOE piece just for a second. So one of the things I would like to talk about again is while we talk about budget, I think it's important to try to find different and new ways to increase revenue that is not tax driven by the residents. So there are a couple of items that I think we're working on and proposals that I'd like to just have people briefly discuss. One was out of general government, and I know that Carol, myself, and John have discussed this. And I think there was briefly discussed on the council floor, but John, if you just want to do the quick overview of the license plate, the out-of-state license plate, because that's a potential revenue that although we may not see revenue starting in July or August or September, it's going to help throughout the year, this next budget year, and into the following budget years, on and on. So.
Yep. So I sent all of you an article that was in the Hartford Courant earlier today, outlining some things that are being done in other cities and towns around the state. I know I've spoken with people here from West Haven who are using the same firm. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now. The same firm that came and talked to us about how they go about helping municipalities identify individuals who have vehicles in the community that are registered either out of state or in a different city and town in Connecticut, thus not paying their local tax on their vehicles. And I believe in this case of Vernon, they were able to generate an additional $350,000 of tax revenue by getting vehicles on the tax rolls that are rightly supposed to be on the tax rolls. We've talked to that same company about working in Enfield, and they did a presentation to general government that Carol, Gina, and I saw, and I think we are looking to move forward with engaging them to help us. Della, the tax collector, and Vicki Rose, Della, the tax assessor, Vicki Rose, the tax collector, were in that meeting. They had a chance to ask whatever questions they needed. They were very comfortable with the agency that we spoke with. And so I think that is something that is ultimately going to come before the council. And I think what's most important here is we are simply asking people to follow the law and register their car as they are required to by statute in the municipality where their cars are garaged. And when people don't do that, it places an additional burden on all of the rest of us who have our cars garaged here, registered here, and pay the appropriate tax on our vehicles. So that is an additional source of us just righting the ship, if you will, and ultimately getting on the tax rolls things that should rightly be on our tax rolls.
Perfect. Thank you. And while it's something that'll come before the council in a resolution, we thought that it was sort of right to just bring here so people understand it's another possible source of some revenue coming in starting next year's budget. Thank you, John. Another piece that I think we are working on, Maya has sent a proposal, I think, over to the town attorney and sort of a discussion piece regarding landlords. So
Out of town landlords.
Out of-
Specifically. Again, looking at folks that don't live in Enfield but are benefiting from Enfield. It looks like from my research, around 35% of Enfield residents rent, and about 15,000 units are owned by folks that don't live in Enfield. So they're making a substantial amount of money off of us. I am proposing some kind of sliding scale fee whenever they increase their rents. So if it's something modest like 3%, maybe there wouldn't be any increase. But once you start ticking up towards 8%, and then 8% would actually, and that's a number I'm throwing out that we can discuss. But once you reach that 8% increase, it should flag fair housing. And they need to, the landlords need to provide the fair housing why they're raising the rent that much. And so 3% would be like no fee, 3% to 6 would be 150 per unit, 6 to 8 would be 350 per unit, and then again, the 8% would flag us and make sure that our residents aren't being taken advantage of. Again, that is out of town landlords. That would not affect anybody that lives in Enfield and rents in Enfield. I do have a one pager for anybody that wants to take a look at it. Again, the town attorney is reviewing that, but just trying to get creative and trying to find revenue where we're not asking for it from our folks.
Yeah. And Maya did a really good sort of proposal for it that once the town attorney, sort of says her piece, you guys can sort of filter that out to all of us. And I think it'll be a good discussion piece. And
again, it wouldn't take effect until like May.
Yeah.
Next year.
And again, right, it's not something that it would have to come forward to the council for resolution. But again, almost apropos for tonight, because we can talk about additional sources of revenue possibilities for the upcoming years. So, thank you for that.
Yes.
And very creative. I appreciate that type of out of the box thinking.
That's what I'm here for.
All right. So lastly, I think Steve was working on something. I don't know if it came from, if it was like whatever subcommittee it was discussed in. I don't remember. But it is cameras on school buses. So go ahead.
All right, I'll give you a little background. Last December, the town manager, Matt and myself, we went to a CCM conference, and we saw one of the vendors that was named Bus Patrol. So very simply, Bus Patrol is, they use AI camera technology to catch drivers driving illegally through stopped school buses. I'm like, I was really intrigued by that. But I wasn't sure, would Enfield benefit or not, so I asked Matt and he said, sure, let's have a meeting with the stakeholders. So I invited the superintendent, the school bus company, the owner of the school bus company, the police chief, myself, the town manager, just to get an idea of where are we at. I know, the genesis behind this is obviously the safety of our kids. I know what we invest in the schools, safety officers, and I thought this would be good for keeping our kids safe. So we brought in the representative from the company. And I was shocked to learn that the school bus owner and the dispatcher for the company says they're able to count about 90 infractions of people driving by and they rate the licenses, and then they send it to motor vehicles and nothing happens. But there's another 90 that they don't capture. So I'm like, wow, that was alarming. And then Steve, the superintendent, was saying he sees it all the time. They're right here on Enfield Street. The representative says that's very conservative. He anticipates a town of this size about 500 or more a month of infractions.
Oh,
Yeah, and he's being very conservative. So I'm gonna talk to the generating, how it can produce income and not, I don't wanna focus on the safety because May 18th, I'm gonna have the representative come in the council meeting and be a special guest with a slide presentation and show you how this all works. So there's gonna be a lot of questions, but I wanna focus on the revenue part. We run about a fleet of about 100 buses. And we average about 18 days every month during the school year. And it comes to about 2 to 3 infractions per bus per week, what they will be capturing. Which comes to about $540, 540 infractions per month. Our takeaway from that, because this is funded by the company, they will come in over the summer. It costs about $10,000 in technology per school bus that they will install on their dime, and they capture when everyone's getting caught, and they pay online, which they'll be handling administratively. That's how they capture their money back. We don't invest a dime, and that's in writing. And we can also talk to other municipalities too, but, so he's modeling us after Shelton. Shelton has 70% the size of our fleet of buses. Shelton, Connecticut, I think the first, what did he say here? First 6 weeks, they had 800 tickets. So breaking down the numbers here, he anticipates the town of Enfield of getting 74,900 a month, just our take. They'll get their portion out of the 135,000. That equates to about almost 750,000 a year from scofflaws, basically, who are driving past school buses. And I guess we're really right. We have a lot of state roads. There's a backup on I-91. People are rushing to work. They're driving down at Route 5. They need to get to work. They're driving fast, you know. So he says he's never failed to over deliver on his estimates. So he's coming up very conservative because, and for what you will take that number and just cut it in half. So maybe 375,000 a year of newfound money that we didn't budget for and anticipate. Ideally, we want this number to go to zero in 3 to 4 to 5 years because we don't want people passing school bus, but he says that never happens. They're all to all of Connecticut. They were the genesis behind the legislation that was passed in 2024. They're throughout the whole country. They've been going, now they're going to Massachusetts. They go in, they do a sample. I think Bridgeport was their first pilot. They went in and showed on their dime, this is what's happening in your town. How many people were driving past it? And then that was enough to eye-opening to pass the legislation. So it's $250 a ticket and no points against your license. It's a civil fine, like a parking fine. But anyway, I don't want to belabor this too long, but I'm kind of excited because I think it's a good program.
Yeah, okay. And a win-win. We either make revenue or people drive safely.
Correct.
All right.
That's the idea.
Ideally, people drive safely. That would be great. Okay, perfect. So we kind of wanted to lead with that. So now we do have, there is no one specific way to do budget deliberations. So understand there's not like a specific agenda that we need to start with one or the other. We do have Donald here tonight, and Rick for the CIP vehicles, which I would like to discuss. I would, however, if people want to, since we do have this information about the ECS funding, I'd kind of like to have a discussion about the Board of Ed piece. I will not speak for everybody. Everybody is welcome to put in their input. We can pull up the board if John wants to, if we would like. I will say I am where I think it should happen is if we're getting that money from the state, or if the school is going to be seeing an increase at the ECS funding, then our contribution from the town should be offset by that. So if they're getting the extra million, we'll call it even, right? An extra million, then what they would be getting from the town is reduced by $1 million, and they would still be at 100% of the ask that they came to us with. Now, that is what I'm comfortable with. That keeps them whole. That keeps them at what they requested. It's great that the state is kicking in that extra $1 million, and then we can reduce our portion by $1 million, but still keeping them whole. I think we have consensus, at least on our side, to not touch the BOE piece, and that remain what they asked. So the only adjustment would be when the ECS comes up, our portion comes down, that equivalent amount. So if people want to have a discussion about that, I'm happy to do so. John, I see your hand up. I don't know if anybody else has any comments besides that. So John, I can start with you.
So I'm just wondering how people felt if we take the conservative estimate of additional revenue that Carol and I think we're going to get. So if we took the ECS increase, the lower end number of the one-time aid to cities and towns, and the $300,000 for additional funding, we'll call it EMS money, but for lack of better word, that is $1.885 million. Are we comfortable putting that on the big board to see where that moves the needle or not?
I would think so. It's not, obviously it's not a guarantee, so we would put an asterisk on this that it is not guaranteed until we see it. But if it's funding that I think you're pretty confident that we're going to get, I think it would make sense to put it up on the board. However you want to do that piece with the Board of Ed, I will leave up to John and your portion, but I think it makes sense for a starting point to put that 1.8 up on the board as contributions from the state, and then see where our starting point is.
I would second it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will go along with that. Yeah, and I'm definitely in favor of, with that ECSC cost sharing grant, that $1,019,000 or $91, to keep the Board of Ed whole. I think that's an excellent thing that we need.
Yeah. I agree. So, John, are you bringing up the board?
I can.
Yes, please do that. All right, so for Carol and John, just so you know, John Wilcox is gonna pull up the board so we can see that. Cindy, you had?
I do. I fully support that plan. Confirmation of the dollars is important. I mean, this is what we're being told. And also, when can we expect the definitive on it? Is important as well.
Yeah, I think they're saying they're gonna vote somewhere. Carol said she's hearing Monday. John says he's thinking maybe Saturday. So
Okay.
hopefully by our next deliberation date.
So it'll be before we set our budget. So we'll.
I'm sorry. We will all be done on next Wednesday, the 6th. Okay. We're finished. So whatever the number is, we're right. Carol, I'm right? Whatever the number is by Wednesday, the 6th,
Yeah.
we'll know.
Yeah.
Which is before the 11th. Yeah.
So I'm emailing our budget person right now, and I've got to get a clarification from her, because the way she's reading this, and again, that's why everything is in flex with the language. I'm going to read it verbatim so that everybody is on the same page. Currently, Enfield will get $1.192946 this year as a separate payment for offsetting the mill rate. Next year and every year going forward, the ECS Foundation for Enfield will go up 1019672. So that's a little different than what John's explaining. So that's why the language is so important with the vote on Saturday or Monday, right? So the way we're reading it is that ECS money is coming next year.
Right.
Okay.
So it should be correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Right, thank you.
All right. So, yeah, I think, yes. So
So
we
my-
do, yeah.
So to finish this kind of for this piece, I mean, I think that 1.192 that is, money infused into the town, the 1.192 million is definitely going to help us with our budget either way. I don't think it's going to be a total of 2 million. I don't think the board gets their increase and then we get the 1.192.
No, I don't think that either.
No, yeah, I think, right, I think, yeah, I think what John is saying is that the board gets their 1.19 and then we get a one-time of 865.
865. That's the way I'm understanding.
That's what I'm understanding, but regardless, I do think that obviously we can let's put sort of
Put it on the
best
board.
case scenario, put it up on the board.
I thought.
Matt.
I just want to make sure, so, because I was talking.
There's two. Zachary.
So
There's
the
two.
1.1, the ECS type money.
Yeah.
Is that coming to the town or going straight to the board?
My understanding is if it's ECS, that it's gonna go straight to the board,
Okay.
which means then we would just make the offset. So again,
For next
in the
year,
end,
not this year.
Next year, right? The budget that we're working on, the
July
budget
1st.
that starts July 1st.
No, I read it differently, but that's why that's why we kind of need to clarify the language.
Yeah, either way, though, it's going to have, I mean.
It's
originally,
gonna have
I
an
didn't know it should
impact
go to
on
revenue.
this year's budget,
Yeah, it's
the
going to have.
1.192.
okay. All right, so let's put the 1.09, whatever it is. 1 point,
It's 1.192946 is the actual number.
yep, and we'll put that directly to the board as an ECS fund. And then that would reduce our contribution by that exact amount.
No. That would
1.19.
that would include the 865.
No.
She's saying the ECS is
1,019,672.
That's for next year.
Yep.
Yep.
And then the 865 is additional revenue, one-time revenue to the town. That is the information. So I know that Carol, what you're saying is that's not your understanding. Again, John says this is his understanding. I don't know anything about except what you guys are saying about the 565 and the 300. But the impression I got from the phone call I got was that it was going directly to the board, ECS funding of $1 million. So why don't we put those numbers up? And again, this keeps the Board of Ed at what they requested of $83,578,112.
So Gina, just for sharing's sake, our group plans on caucusing either Friday later in the evening. We're getting out hopefully early Friday from here. And we were going to caucus Friday evening or Saturday at some point. So we're going to caucus. I can only speak for myself at this point because we haven't sat down and caucused the budget yet. but I definitely am looking at cuts for the board's budget. I can't give you what those numbers are yet, but I want to work to get our mill rate down to a very low number if we're planning on running this referendum this year. So I definitely want to look at cuts right across the board, not just for the Board of Ed, but the town side of the budget as well. So, and I'm strictly talking for myself right now.
No,
So,
that's fine. So after you guys caucus, obviously, if there's different or additional stuff you want to bring, and then if there's consensus, it goes on the board. So that's fine. And if you guys come with whatever your suggestions are, we can talk it out. We can put it up, and if there's consensus, it stays. If there's not, it comes down, which is totally fine. You guys can obviously caucus and bring to the table whatever suggestions that you guys see fit, and that's absolutely within your right.
Yep.
Okay, and that's fine. And we, just because it's going on the board now doesn't mean that we can't make adjustments next week as well. So, but yes, thank you for telling me that piece. All right, so with that 1.865-ish million, that would bring down the mill increase at this point to 2.13. Is that 2.13? Okay. And did that do the ECS piece directly to the BOE and so
Yes.
just offset? So it's a
So you
subtraction from us, right? That's
On the
down.
upper right here, you can kind of see the
Oh, there.
different components, the town budget
Yeah.
will be reduced by, this is the expenditure side only. The 242, which was what we talked about on Monday,
Yep.
the Board of Ed budget would be reduced by the 1.19672. That is the increase in ECS funding for next year that would go to the Board of Ed.
Right. So it looks like we're cutting them at this point, 1.19, 1.01, but we're not. We're just offsetting it by the addition that they're getting. Right.
Right.
Yep.
And so then the revenue pieces would be the $865,000, the one-time aid to municipalities and the funding for the ambulance services.
Okay, perfect. All right, so that's kind of where we are at let's hope, new starting point, which is good news so far. So barring any questions or comments so far, we can sort of kick it to Donald and see if people have questions. Or Matt, if you want to start, this is what we have them here for is really the vehicle piece of the CIP. It's the 2.5 million, which is one of the biggest line items in the CIP, if not the biggest line item in the CIP part. So I don't know if you have sort of a intro for it.
Well, the only preface I'm going to say before they talk, so they're going to be able to talk about, obviously, about the DPW vehicles firsthand.
Mhm.
When it gets to the police vehicles and the need for those,
Mhm.
they're not going to be able to address that.
Yeah.
Well.
Yep.
But they can address what the vehicles that are going to be replaced, what, shape they're in, and those facts. So, we can bring the police chief in and his squad. If you want to talk about the need for the police vehicles, but tonight really we're limited to just the maintenance of those vehicles, those types of things.
Okay.
But-
So the first one is 14, and that's EPD, right? And then the next page is the leasing piece, and then the last page of the chart is for purchase, right? Okay. What's people's pleasure? Do you want to start with DPW side? Because we have them here. I can't see you, but I know you're here.
So I have some stuff.
Okay, yeah, if you would like to, do you want to, before you start, do you have sort of an intro you want to go through?
Yeah, I just want to go through what's on on these.
And then Maria can video.
So I'm gonna need to stop sharing. I think, Donald, you want to put this up on the screen here, so.
So just so we all understand, so on these green sheets here, we have the year, the vehicle type, the miles, sometimes they're in hours, depending on the vehicle. And the stuff right here in this, underneath this gray section is a 5-year repair cost of that vehicle, not since inception, just the last 5 years
That we have spent.
that we have spent.
Okay.
Yes. So if you want to look at the EPD one, just for example, the 2001 vehicle, so in the last 5 years, we spent $5,504.23, and that's for that. So that's how you read all of these are all the same regarding this week. So how we got to these, so how we got these vehicles on this list was, and Rick is going to explain this in great detail. That is located on this large white sheet that we have here. That was the fourth one.
Oh, yeah, that's page 4, yep.
Yep. And if you look at this paragraph up here, that's the same one as we have up on the screen, but Rick will talk about that right now. So if you haven't met Rick Davenport, by the way, this is Rick Davenport, our fleet manager. Hello.
How you doing, Rick?
Hi, Rick.
So we developed the BRP, the vehicle replacement plan, around year 2014. And we took our legacy work order system and used all that data, put it all together, and you can see when the repair costs were escalating based on years and mileage. And with that data, we and our experience, we use those records to determine the optimum replacement targets by miles, hours, and age. Targets are timed to occur just before the unit experiences the high maintenance costs. That's the ideal situation, or uncontrolled maintenance. So, and they're fine tune these life cycles, but generally in a category, but also as years go on, we can fine tune sometimes each specific vehicle by the environment it operates, where it operates, its specific use, severity of use, that can be unique to that vehicle or department. And so it's kind of an ongoing adjustment. And the vehicle replacement plan also has escalators in it. So we looked at last year's replacement costs, and each year going forward, there's a 2.5% increase, scaled out to right now to 2035. And do you have any questions on that piece?
On that piece, no.
Okay.
So an example of the VRP, which is vehicle replacement plan. So we have all of the automobiles that we have here, and Rick has spent time, let me pull up a little. So these are all our vehicles that we have here. These are all autos that are non-police automobiles. And we just go through, and at some point, this was a 2016, should be replaced in 24, patrolled spare car. And that's how we did this for every single piece of equipment for auto. We have, that was the police ones, and we go up the top. There are other these are the non-police ones, like building department, the pool car. And we have all these, when these should be replaced all the way out to past 2035.
Okay.
That includes for all the autos, our buses and vans, we've done every single one as well. The light, medium duty trucks, and we total these up, and that's how, but on each one of these compartments or this specific type of vehicle, it's all broken down there. Heavy duty trucks. And in the end, we got to get to the totals. So for 2026, to catch up with everything, we'd be looking at about 220,000 in non-PD autos, $1 million for PD or so, buses and vans, 800,000, light medium trucks 947, and heavy duty trucks about 2.6, so 5.5.
Mhm.
We took that 5.5 and we narrowed it down to the request, and this is what is in front of you right now, to that $2 million. So again,
Which one? Because there is,
Confused.
right? So we have, so there, this total on one page is 1.174 million, and then another vehicle, 8 vehicle replacement is 2.5 million. So which ones are in the CIP?
So so the way this is laid out, you have police vehicles,
Yeah, that's here.
then you have
That's
the
1.4.
light duty vehicles, trucks and vans.
Like,
And then you have the heavy vehicles. The heavy vehicles are all towards the lease or going towards the lease. So in the budget, there's a total of $2.5 million going to vehicles.
yep,
500,000 is going towards leasing.
this
that-
page.
Yes, that page.
So this page with 8 vehicle replacement cost of 2.5, there's 500,000 allocated
Ultimately, that works out to the
for
$500,000.
leasing, to
year.
lease all of these.
Yep.
Okay,
And then you effectively have about $1 million for the police vehicles and
Yep.
a little over $1 million, a little under $1 million for police vehicles, a little over $1 million for the DPW vehicles.
No, it's in, so that's why it says at $2 million in the CIP book.
Yeah.
oh, so everybody know where we are before we?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, I just want to make sure we all understand where we are, what we're looking at. Okay, so, all right, was there anything else, Donald, before, or Rick, before we pepper you with questions, if we have any?
I'm all set.
All right, perfect, thanks. Go ahead, Marie.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make a statement, and I would have preferred this more, Matt, by department. I want to know how many police cruisers we have, how many we have to get repaired, how many we have to replace, DPW, the same thing. This is just one very large number. And I'm finding it really hard to dissect it. So for my own sake, I would rather have it done by department. That's the way it was done in the past.
You do have a fire department.
It is by
But
department.
I'm not, I have to go through here and say, okay, this is, it's not.
That's all EPS, EPD, right on the top.
It's all EPD.
Yep.
That's all for the
We
parties.
don't have how many cruisers they have total.
Well, that was provided
That was
by
on-
the chief originally.
Yeah.
In his presentation.
It's not, and we also got 5 cruisers that we still got yet. So that's another.
Yeah.
I do have some questions on the public works. There were some figures that really jumped up. And so looking at I'm looking at my book here, my binder. If I go to page 57, so for the revised under, there was a large change here. For 2027, we're proposing $1,920,265. I mean, it's up almost $500,000 or $420,000. And that's just for salaries.
What-
So is that,
What department are you talking
we're
about?
talking public works.
I thought we were on.
We're talking about vehicles.
Oh, okay, then I'm gonna stop. All right, then no, I'm, again, I will have to go through this and dissect it. But no, I have questions on the actual budget.
Oh, right, okay.
That's.
No,
what I
and we will
thought.
absolutely get to
Okay.
that. I figured since we have
No.
the CIP piece, we'll deal with the vehicles. It's here somewhere. I knew it was, there it goes. Yes. They have, I can't read this, but it is on their page 10 or 20.
I'll compare it when I get, I didn't
All right.
bring all of that with me, so I can compare that.
All right, Zach.
Okay, so a few questions. So I'm looking at this one, really visually, let's just see, so people can know where I'm.
That's
The one with the least amount, the 2.5 million, yeah.
It's leasing 500,000 allocated for leasing of those.
Yeah, so I just wanted, so it mentions here under the notes for the crane truck that we use third party to provide service for the cranes. Do you know how much that costs us per year so far?
We're speaking of the WPCF one. I don't have that number, but Todd does express the frustration with having to call someone out and also delays where get a response because they have to get a third party as well as the expense.
Okay.
There are 5 pump stations that we have pumps that require 2 crane trucks to lift them out, or 1 bigger one, and that's what we're.
Okay, all right. And next I'll move to this one here, the 1.174. So typically, it has been the policy for a while, and I know that it's referenced here in the descriptions that we would utilize our police cars when they're taken out of service for these town vehicles. Now, I guess it's somewhat more of a comment, because I know that there has been references from town staff that a lot of these vehicles have had significant issues, and so they're just being drained into the ground. But I would prefer that where it says descriptions where these are currently police cars, that when we start talking about these vehicles, that they transfer down out to town departments. So that's kind of like my general opinion. I'm comfortable with that practice that the town has done for probably 20 years.
Well, can I address that real quick? Because there's another viewpoint on that. So when we put this together originally, we had looked at when can we get better value for the vehicles in trade-ins or sell? And so the plan was that ultimately we get to a point where we have to put less tax dollars into the vehicle replacement. If you don't sell those vehicles, so a police car goes through, what's the life cycle of a frontline police car?
Ideally, we'd like those patrols at 5 years.
Okay, so let's say 5 years. At the end of 5 years, we sell that, we get 10,000-ish,
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
If it's in.
Yeah,
usable.
depending upon the shape of it, right? As long as it's still drivable. That money then goes back into the plan to help reduce what we have to put forward. Now, I understand what you're saying, and it has been a long practice to use a police interceptor. So let that sink in. Police interceptor for, say, social services to use, right? That car, if it has any, is available to drive, that car is going to get about, I don't know, 10 miles to the gallon, 12 miles a gallon.
In that range.
Be a car that probably is not in the best shape to begin with because of the miles. And you're going to have someone that probably has not been trained on a police interceptor vehicle to drive because, I don't know if you've driven one, but you put a little bit of gas on it, zoom, right? And so it really doesn't make economical sense and safety sense to be passing those cars down. Plus, we get more money by selling them. And then, the other side of this is you develop a pull system. So you have vehicles that are, A, better gas mileage, and B, more appropriate for the services we're, using them for. And so you don't need as many of those bigger cars anymore to achieve that. So, that was, again, back in 2014, when we put this together, that was how the plan was going to go. We were going to be more fuel efficient. We were going to have right-sized vehicles for the people doing it. You've sort of been doing that for a number of years. You can look at the building department. When I was here, the building department was using Crown Vics. They're now using electric cars. And so, again, reducing the cost, right size for the people using it, and safer, then you can, use the value of the police cruisers to get rid of it and make more money to help pay off, what the cost is for the replacement vehicle.
Okay, I appreciate that perspective. So I'm going down that road, then we can talk a little bit about what the vehicles are that are being replaced here. So first off, can you talk to, I'm trying to find it here. So these larger SUVs, what are some of the vehicles here? So like this SUV for 44,000. I think I was reading.
We still, which one?
With some for building.
Oh, yes, you did.
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah, 2013. So are we replacing it with a larger vehicle?
That's
Yeah.
replaced with larger SUV
2013.
for. You're on the light duty sheet.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I wanted. Can you elaborate? Yeah. So there's equipment storage issue. So what is the current vehicle that exists?
It's a small escape, yeah, it's a little Ford
Oh,
Escape.
so it's like a crossover. It's not a full set, and you want to go to Woodland in it.
Yeah, maybe whatever we can get for the funds that would be actually become available, but the ideal situation would be something larger where she can put more equipment in it. Yeah, it doesn't have to be an Explorer, but something in that.
So that's right, because it's 44, because it's not an Expedition, right? So you're not
Correct.
a massive vehicle.
No,
Okay, all right, so that makes me comfortable. And then what is the pickup that's 92,000? At the bottom?
2013.
okay.
Yeah.
This is not a pickup truck off the lot. This is this would have to be purchased as a cabin chassis where you just buy the chassis and then it's outfitted with, an all season, dump body, preferably stainless steel, and a plow. It'll have plows, sanders. It might even be a flat.
250?
This would be a 350 range.
Okay, yeah, because I was about to say 92,000, but that makes sense. I appreciate that. Okay. I think those were the two things that stuck out to me about these specific questions, so. Thank you.
No problem. Harold, I see your hand.
Yeah, so just a quick comment on something that Marie had asked for. And I think it's fine getting a list of what you are replacing these vehicles with. But if we could get a list of every, like DPW and the police department on what they actually have right now for a total vehicles, because, and I'm not going to pick on anybody, but during budget, people used to drive these jalopies to the budgets and say, we really need these vehicles replaced. And they're vehicles that have never been driven in a number of years. And I guess what I'm looking for is, what do we have sitting on the back lots right now in each of these departments? So, and the reason I'm asking is something to what Zach had said. When I'm looking at the police list, right? So let me find it. I've got so many, and I can barely read this stuff. It's so little. Okay. So, for example, for extra job cars, are we purchasing an $85,000 vehicle to park at extra jobs?
So what the intention is with this is, these are the vehicles that are getting taken out of the fleet. And so what's going to be purchased are cars that are going to be more frontline. They then bump cars that are frontline now to be handed down to the next set. So these would not be brand new, or at least not all of them would be brand new cars. Some of them might be, but the majority of the brand new cars are going to the frontline uses. And again, on the police department, we'll have the chief come in and talk about all that. Tonight, again, what I was able to get was the discussion about the condition the vehicles are in that are being requested, as well as, again, what Public Works is requesting.
Yeah, but to what I'm saying, Matt, if you look down this list, you've got 2 extra job cars. What are those going to be used for now? I mean,
Those will
I
be
don't.
taken out of service.
I'm sorry?
So these vehicles that are on this list will be removed from service. So they'll be sold, junked, or whatever, we do.
No, I understand that. What I'm asking is, you're buying a vehicle for $85,000 in this line, right?
Yep.
Okay, what is that vehicle going to be used for? Because all,
We'll have the chief come in and explain that. He wasn't available tonight. So we'll have him in to explain exactly how those cars are coming in and what they're going to be used for.
okay, because, I mean, school detective is in here twice. I don't know what a school detective car is. I don't even know what a school detective is. I know what our school security and our SROs are. I don't know what a school detective car is. I have no idea what that is. This is the social worker. Is this giving the social worker that is at the police station her own car?
Again,
That individual does have a vehicle available to her, yes.
Well, she has one available, but this is purchasing a new car for her. Correct?
So again, believe me, I had difficulty understanding what the movement was on this.
Yeah.
But what is going to happen, all those vehicles are going to be taken out of service. The vast majority of those vehicles that are being taken out of service are going to be replaced by cars we currently have in service. Okay, so again, the new vehicles are predominantly going to be going to the frontline patrol vehicles. There's going to be some, I believe, administration cars, SRO cars will be brand new, but the vast majority of the cars that are being purchased will be frontline police cruisers, going out on the road on a continuous basis. Those that are currently in service are going to be bumped down to then these uses. Because what you have to consider is how it has been in the past was, if we had 10 police cars, let's just say we just had 10. When you replaced five would go for other uses. And you'd have 5 brand new ones and 5 of the original 10. And then the next year you replace 5 more, those 5 would go to the uses and you have 10, fairly new cars, and your older cars, some would be taken out of service, some would be used for the odd jobs, going to schooling for the detectives, going to the courts or whatever those used. You wouldn't be using the frontline cruisers on. And again, I will have the police department in here to explain how they do that. Tonight, we can talk about what kind of shape those cars are in, but we can't address how they're going to be used. I will have the chief in for that.
So, okay, so not to take any more time, can we have originally what I asked for, like a list of every vehicle on the lots for Public Works and the police department and social services? Just because, showing me the vehicles that you're replacing is not telling me that, one, we really need these vehicles, and two, that we've had some of these vehicles sitting on the lots forever, right? So why am I replacing them?
Well,
So-
I would love to have the conversation about first the heavy trucks. Can we talk about the heavy trucks?
Yep.
Yes.
What those are, because we can firsthand talk about those right now.
Yes, all right. So before, 1 second, I know that Lori had just a quick comment, she said.
No, I agree with you.
No, I did.
Lori.
I'm sorry.
Lori,
I'm sorry. Lori sounds like Lori.
and then we're gonna talk about the big, heavy vehicles.
Okay, before we shift gears, going along with Counselor Hall's request about a list of all vehicles, I think it might be advantageous to know with each vehicles, which ones are being taken home by the officer,
Okay.
which ones stay in the lot.
Okay, I will make sure they have that.
Yes, and so for
Thank you.
everybody to know that, like we said, slide number 20 on the PD has how many vehicles they have, what they're for, and vehicles by division. So that's actually broken out for us in the presentation slide. All right, so heavy vehicles, which is the one that has the the 500,000 allocated for leasing, that is the $2.5 million total sheet that has 8 vehicles.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have specific questions about these things?
well, if I
Or
could.
what, go right ahead, Matt.
So kind of jumping off on Carol's question about, what do we have on the lots and how we're using them?
Mm-hmm,
I think this is a good starting point
mm-hmm.
because, these are for the main part, active vehicles that we're using on a daily basis. Correct?
Correct.
So can you kind of give an understanding of these vehicles and what the replacement is for it? Why?
Okay. The bulky weight loader is used, relied upon heavily in an emergency situation if we have weather events and we have to, manage debris, trees, what have you. That's also used for household collections, bulky waste collections at curbs. And we find many other uses for it.
So this is just a large truck?
Yep.
I think that.
It has a claw, if you will,
This is a claw truck. And how many claw trucks do we have?
We have two. The other one is a 2009. This one here is 2001.
Can I ask a question as we go line by line, or do you want me to write them down and wait to the end?
Okay. Go ahead.
So if we have two, how many pickups a day? Are we using both trucks every single day of the week?
We do not. We primarily use them on Wednesdays where we can have anywhere between 4 to 12 stops and any other thing that we use it for, so.
So you use them just on Wednesday? Did I hear that right?
We use it, well, that's when we schedule all of our bulky waste pickups are on Wednesdays. We use that truck to do any other odd jobs. We find a mattress on the side of the road. We do it, that's what we use that for. We're getting trees down. We pick up the stump or the butts that if we have to take it out, we use that on. Typically, they go out a minimum of twice a week, each one.
Okay, but you're only using one on Wednesday, and then you're using the other one just for odd things. Okay, got it. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, very good. The 2001 loader. This is a very used piece of equipment. So it has a lot of problems with rot, and Volvo Construction does not really, they're not obligated to maintain parts for this anymore at that age. It's becoming difficult to find parts for it. We did have to go to Belgium, the country Belgium, for parts for it a couple of years back. Again, that one there, I'm sorry. It's also, it's used in the wintertime. It's highly relied upon for large parking lots, mainly the schools. It's also serves as a backup for when we have issues with the primary loader at the transfer station. This one will be used in that location, or if the other ones are down at, we use it in our yard loading trucks. It also is the one that is used for the 100 horsepower snow blower that's attached to the front, if you've seen that in operation. It is an essential piece of equipment, and it's becoming a maintenance problem. The 2003 dump truck, we're looking at 23 years old. This one is a 615. So this is a large heavy duty dump truck, plow, sander, also heavily relied upon in the winter. The 2007 truck at number 813. Again, 19 years old, had the same construction, heavy duty plow truck, sander, all season dump truck. The dump body on this one is currently not usable, is completely rotted. And if anybody's thinking about, like, at this age, replacing the body and those components so it could be fully functional again, I'm getting quotes of around $65,000. And so, it's more, I believe we're getting a better deal if we just replace the whole truck and make it uniform with the rest of the fleet.
How many dump trucks do we have?
I think we have 12 of those large heavy duty dump trucks. The pickup trucks are the light duty trucks. I'm not sure. I don't have the number in front of me, probably in the 20s.
Hang on one second for me, Rick. John, did you have a question on one of the vehicles
Yep.
now? Go ahead.
I do. Look, so I don't want to cut anybody off, but the way I'm looking at this, there are 8 vehicles in this chart, right?
Yeah.
Which one of these vehicles can you get another year out of? None of them are ideal. None of them are ideal. I understand that, and I appreciate that. But we've got to make some choices here, and so which one can you get another year out of?
If we have to make that choice, it is number 615. That could be pushed off another year. That's one that is actually fully functional. The other heavy duty dump trucks on the list, some are on the leasing page. I think one's on the leasing page. They're not fully functional.
So
615 is fully functional.
That's the 2003.
2003 dump truck, number 3 on the leasing list.
So that's 300, and I know it's on the leasing list, but does that save us $325,000?
No, it saves in the lease. We're only leasing, so these 8 vehicles, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, the 8 vehicles on this list, we are spending $500,000 out of the CIP for next year to lease 8 new versions of these vehicles,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
So we're not replacing them dollar for dollar. This 2.5 is costing us 500 for a lease.
Okay, so just if I could just then, thank you. I did not, and my apologies for not being clear on that point.
No, it's hard because I know you guys aren't right here. I get it.
Yeah. There's no real, there's not a lot of savings in this. Okay. We've got to get to a point where we're identifying real savings in this budget somewhere. And going through the leasing plan, each one of these vehicles is a relatively small dollar amount that adds up to $500,000. Right? This is not a place, as we're trying to find some savings in the budget, that I think we can certainly decide not to lease one here or there. But the real dollar amount is in the vehicles that we are looking to buy and purchase.
Right.
And so I feel like, let's look at, if you want to keep going down the leasing side, that's fine, I can wait. But if you look at the replacement program for the things that you want to purchase, there's $1.17 million in there. These are much smaller replacement cost vehicles. Which of these can we get by with for another year?
Wait, John, can I pause you on
can-
that? So
Yeah,
only
pause me,
because
that's
I
fine,
just-
that's fine, we
only
can
because
wait.
then we can, if we're putting a pin in this page, then we can go to answer your question on the next page. Can we do
Yeah,
that?
that's totally fine. Yeah,
Okay.
that's totally fine.
Yes.
I wanted to be clear, I was understanding
Right.
these numbers right. Okay.
Right. So the way I'm looking at it is the 2.5 is really costing us 500. Right, okay. Bob, wait, hang on, Carol, hang on. Bob's next.
Thank you. In regard to the leasing, we've been talking about 2.5 million for replacement, 500 for the lease, 500,000 for the leasing. The leasing program, how many years are we leasing the vehicles, or is this per budget year?
5 years.
The five-year program.
So it's 500,000 every year.
For 5 years.
500,000 for 2 years, which would give you 2.5.
Yep, 2.5 million, yep.
Okay, very good.
All right, so my one comment is I sort of agree with John. I don't know that this page right here is really where we're gonna take the savings. And my comment, and we can discuss it, that's fine. My comment would be at leadership, again, we all have this page that Matt identified from a CIP sweep. At leadership, he says that's probably up to about $500,000. So if we have $500,000 sitting in unallocated CIP that is now out of closed up projects, we can sort of, for easy math, right? To simplify it, take that sweep, and then we take this page and we move it away. And now this doesn't cost us any money for next year. Right.
We were using that for the units.
So, no, that's coming out of fund balance. We talked about it in the beginning. So that's kind of the way I look at it, because I do believe it sounds like it makes more sense to lease some of these vehicles instead of replacing them, because the replacement cost is astronomical and needs change, right? And technology changes. So that's just and again, not everybody's brain works the same way, and we're all going to look at this differently. We're all going to have different, opinions. But the way I'm kind of looking at it is, I'm going to take that 500,000 from that he found that's left over from CIP, and I'm gonna zero this out.
That's only for 1 year.
For 1 year, yeah. Yeah. So but that's found money for this budget. Because that's now money that we're not using, that's actually in extra fund balance. Go ahead.
Could I also say, maybe to save a lot of headache and heartache through this, if you just tell us the target number you want for vehicles to spend, we can get you a list of what we recommend, rather than go through vehicle by vehicle.
Right. And so I don't necessarily need to go vehicle by vehicle. I know our caucus has a number for the PD vehicles, and we can put it up on the board right now. But again, that's PD, but if we're talking CIP vehicles, let's get up the board and we'll tell you we're reducing them by 6. As of right now, that's our consensus. They're gonna get 8, not 14. So if you want to put that number, that reduces the CIP by 510,000 for taking 6 vehicles away from the PD. So if we want to do it that way, I'm perfectly fine with that, because I don't know that I need to ask it's just a number that we need to get down to, right, for CIP, a comfort number. And I don't know that I need to tell them they're not going to get a Ford pickup, and instead I'm going to give them a SUV hybrid. I'm going to say, you're getting $1 million. You pick the vehicles that have to be replaced versus don't have to be replaced. But I think, again, I'm going to speak for our caucus as initially, right now, our comfort level is reducing PD by 6. They get 8 out of the 14. And again, as deliberations go on, that number may change. So I don't know, John, if you want to just do it that way, that might just be an easier way to do it if you want to pull up the board.
I agree.
And so we can see some hard numbers. I'm fine with people wanting all of this information. That's totally fine. I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if it makes sense for me to say, you don't need this car, but you need this SUV. I feel like I'm just going to give you $1 million and you're going to figure it out.
Well, we would, if you give me the
Right.
target number, we'll come back with what the recommendation is. You will already have the other information that's requested tonight, which is all the vehicles that are on the lots. So you'd be
Right.
able to make a better decision at that point.
Right.
But give us a target to go for.
Right, so I'll tell you for the EPD, our target is reduce it by 6, so he gets 8. So that's $510,000 for 6 vehicles.
Can I add something?
No, I think you should go. What vehicles out of this particular list, like John had stated,
Yeah.
you know,
We can go,
what can they live with for another year?
right, and then we can, right, because these numbers aren't, it's easier for the PD, right, because they're all
Right.
85,000. It's 85 times 6.
But, so two things.
But,
Understand that, if you're asking a question that probably is not the right question to be asking, because, if you tell them that we're not gonna spend, we're not gonna buy any of those large vehicles, they're going to make them run as long as they can run. And when they can't run anymore, they won't run anymore, right? So when you ask them what can they do, that's what they can do. If you ask what should be done, which is the real question to me, you get a different answer. And that's what they're trying to provide now. I mean, this is not optimal to them because we're still behind. I mean, this does not get us to where in their minds we need to be. In their minds, where we need to be is on that big sheet that Donald started off with that has a lot more vehicles on it, right? And so we've already done a part of this saying, we know that we can't get all these vehicles because the number is going to be too high for it, right? So we've already narrowed it down. What I'm hearing tonight is that there is a desire to go even further down. And I guess that's the question that saves us all a lot of time, is if you say, here's the number, Matt, this is the number, you figure it out. We'll go back, we'll figure out what those vehicles that absolutely in our minds have to be replaced. You'll see them at the next meeting because we'll prepare all that and then we'll move on. Because I think if you ask the question, what can you do with this vehicle? They do a lot already. I mean, when you see what we spend on these vehicles that are past the prime already, we're just understanding that we're going to be spending more money and keeping them, but we can keep them and not replace them. So.
right. Are you done?
No, my question is, we see all the prices of the replacement costs, and we see them every year. Now, are those estimated high, average, or low in terms of brand new vehicles? Now, have we looked at vehicles that maybe could be 5 years younger? Like, have you looked at 2020, 2021s that might be available with low mileage, used vehicles for replacement as compared to a brand new vehicle? Have we looked at that?
I would let them speak to that.
I'm not sure you can buy you might be able to buy a used refuse truck. We've looked at that in the past and decided against it maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It became a burden somehow with not knowing what you're getting you end up with a fleet that is not unique. I mean, not uniform. So we have to stock a lot more parts. We have to work on different vehicles.
Well, what I'm looking at, I'm not looking at, the high end, I'm looking at a pickup truck, okay? Instead of a 2026, why can't you look at a 20, or instead of a 2027? Why can't we look at a 2025 or a 2020, where that replacement cost could be less than?
Purchasing vehicles and getting the specs, everything's got to be on some sort of purchasing cooperative. state contract. If there are leftover vehicles that haven't been utilized yet, that are older, we often utilize that.
Right,
If they have some,
we've done that
Yeah.
in the past. Correct.
but there has to be available on a purchasing cooperative or some sort of a contract.
Okay, so you're figuring all these figures, 2026, 2027 on the high end.
Yes, the current model year.
Okay, thank you.
So I think to Matt's point, and I think, I know we all understand this, and, you know, the department heads are doing exactly what their job is, and Matt's doing exactly what his job is, but, and we're gonna have to do exactly what our job is, right? We can't solve all of these problems in 1 year, right? We just can't. And we need to do what we can without decimating as more, right, the vehicles and what they need, because they have to continue to be able to run and function. So I will go to Zach, and then I see, hang on one second, I see John and Carol.
I had something.
I'm sorry, Maya too. Can you please put the 510 up there, John? Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead, Zach, and then Maya, then John, and then Carol.
Okay, so my first, and this is kind of just some comments that I wanted to share with the police. So I'm comfortable taking it down by 500,000. And I think that there's 2 points of perspective there. We can give the directive to lower it and they make the best decision. But I also think from a policy standpoint, I think it's ridiculous that some of these vehicles need to be fully equipped police cars. And I think from a policy standpoint, as a council, the conversations around that need to change. With the SROs, the school detectives, I struggle to see that they need a fully equipped police car. And the same thing with the administrative personnel. I don't get how a patrol car, which has all of the equipment fully necessary to go out and do a patrol, is the same as the chief's vehicle in cost. I just struggle with that. So I think going forward, on top of these being 6 vehicles being taken out, that we need to be more realistic and more frugal with what we're choosing to put in vehicles that are not out on active patrol consistently.
And I do think the chief said that. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I do think that he said something like he's putting the 85 on each of them, even though the outfitting costs may vary with some of them, right? Did he say that? I didn't just make that up, right? He did say that. So you're right. So that 85, I think, is his fully equipped piece. Yeah.
So he's rounding up.
Yes. Yep.
Well, that doesn't do any good if we're rounding up, then we're overtaxing residents.
No, because we're still reducing them by that amount of
So it's
6.
Well, to that point, but if the total request, if you round it up for all of these, and the total request is $1.1 million, that's $1.1 million against mill rates at the bottom here for the 14 vehicles. So if he's rounding up, what is he rounding up by?
I don't know.
Like what's actually the cost?
Well, what he has said, I don't know if he said it here, but I know he said it to me, is that when you're putting the full light package on the vehicles, so, you know, if you see his car, he has a full light package on, right? That drives up the cost. He has all the radios. So all the radios go in there. So all these cars are going to have mostly, well, again, when the chief comes in, we can have that conversation. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what he's told me is when you start adding these other things on there, you get close to that $60,000-$70,000 range for those vehicles. Because, you know, again, an administrative car is not going to have the grate in between the, right? It's not going to have the seat that, you know, can be cleaned. Right? There's going to be some things that aren't in there, but, you know, the difference between his car and his car isn't one of those being replaced as far as I know.
So then what's these 2 administrative vehicles? Because, oh, you're right, because the chief does have an Explorer, but he doesn't have a Taurus, correct?
Well, he has an Interceptor, so.
Okay. Well, I'm just looking at what the actual vehicle that's 11 years old. So
Yeah,
then
so
what are
those again, those are the cars that are being taken out of service.
Okay,
Those
yes,
those will be replaced by the cars that come down from the front line. So if there is a detective car that's front line right now and it gets replaced, that will go down to one of those vehicles.
My question, these two administrative vehicles are what?
Again, I'm not sure.
That's the chief.
Okay.
But
Because
we will
it
have-
lists the
we
tech.
will have the chief here to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my general concern is that maybe we need to have deeper conversations of what we're equipping in certain vehicles and what the standard is for the state versus what the standard is we're setting for ourselves. Because I know that we have a highly accredited police department, but I also know that times are getting tougher and that sometimes there's been instances in which the bar for what the state considers appropriate is here, and then we're way over here, and that's coming at a big cost for the town. But I am comfortable with the 6 cars being taken on.
Okay.
So that's mine.
Maya?
Yes, I'm just gonna say what I'm thinking. I don't think it makes any sense to discuss the PD vehicles anymore this evening. Because we're gonna need the chief for those specific questions. I think that is going to be a time saver. Just want to put that out there. Second, I think we're getting in the weeds a little bit with the vehicle replacement program. It's timed. We don't see it timed out here, but you do have it timed out. This is the beginning of a long-standing plan that if we defer any of this, we're just gonna end up shooting ourselves in the foot later because all of this is just gonna cost more money. Am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah. We defer the cost.
Right. So, and I understand that this is a tough budget and we do want to cut the fat where we can, but this is just a starting point. There is no fat. Am I right when I say that?
Well, I think that's the point of view.
Oh, you're not.
Every year there's a conversation about CIP and everything we take out as deferred. And I think there's a difference between deferring something to next year versus having a conversation that it's just, they're gonna have to do less every year. And I think, because that's an important
But
perspective,
less is
because
going
I'm
to
not
actually
deferring
be
6 cars.
More.
I'm not saying next year it's gonna be 17. I'm saying they need to work with less long-term. That long-term, we need to consolidate the amount of fleet that we have.
I'm not talking about PD though.
But
I'm talking about
in general,
the DPW.
I think in general,
That's fine, that's fine. So the DPW vehicle replacement plan starts here for a reason, is what I'm saying. And if we could have deferred any of this, they would have done that.
Well, this is the deferred.
Right. That's all I'm saying.
And-
Like
and-
this is
Well,
baseline.
I think, again, policy discussions are important here, right? And again, let's just look at the refuse vehicles, okay? So we don't run our refuse department like a private company, right? So we run it as a town. Now, if you were a private company, you wouldn't be having this question about, do we need to replace this or not? Because it's already baked in. They know that if I have 10 trucks, if I need 10 trucks, I really need 15 to 18 trucks. Because if you have 2 of something, you really have 1 of something. And you have 1 of something, you have nothing,
Right.
right? Because what happens is these vehicles break down. And if we rely upon how many vehicles do we go out on a route on a given day? How many routes?
It's 8 routes.
8 routes. So that's
Household collection. Oh,
Yeah.
just household.
just refuse, not recycling.
Correct.
Okay, so 8, let's do it. So how many extra vehicles do we have that could be used for that beyond the 8?
We have 2 rear loaders that could be used there, but the problem is they require extra people.
Yep.
And we have 2 extra automatic side loaders.
Okay, so we have 4, but those loaders on certain dates are in service because we need them, the Thompsonville.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct. So days
So we
there.
have those on certain days. And then on Fridays, all bets are off because we're using everything we have.
Everything.
So again, if we're looking at that and you say, well, operate with 2 less trucks. So that means, when are we going to do service on vehicles? Right?
Right.
When do we do services now?
Right.
Would be right.
Currently during the day.
We don't do evening shifts anymore.
Correct.
So our preventative maintenance, if we're doing it, is going to be during the week
Correct.
when they should be in use. So you're gonna be taking a vehicle out of use and use one of the
Spare.
backups, most likely the side loaders, because to use the back loaders, we would need extra personnel. Which
That's correct.
I think we eliminated a position
Yep.
somewhere in the past
Yep.
that would do that. And so it makes it more difficult for us. And if we're gonna do that, where are we pulling the personnel from? We're in-
That's daily.
Okay.
That's a fire drill for that day.
So my point with that is, if we're going to stay in the business of doing trash,
Mhm.
then we need to run it like we're doing a business. And
We need to
it's
fund
to
it.
have, right, and this is part of that. But again, if the decision is not to do that, and you don't want to have these vehicles that we need for the trash, understand that if we don't get rid of that service and we're still providing it, there's going to be those days where you don't have a vehicle that we'll get calls that people aren't getting the trash.
Yeah.
And that's your policy discussion you should be having, is that, I have no problem reducing vehicles and getting rid of vehicles. Every one of them's a headache to me. They all cost money, a lot more than what you see here, right? But we have to actually reduce the service expectations at the same time. Because if you don't do that, then all you're doing is creating a lot of upset people because something's not getting done.
Did someone suggest removing dump vehicles?
No,
Because I haven't.
I'm not saying, I'm using that as an example. You
Then doing more
said,
with less
you
things.
said,
Yeah.
let's go on less vehicles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I'm trying to show you the impact of that statement.
I think that is incredibly evident with the dump truck.
What is it?
I
My,
think that's very evident with that. I'm not refuting that.
Matt, Maya, were you done?
Yeah, I thought we just needed to get down to
Yes.
what this actually is.
Right, I agree.
Okay.
Matt, were you done?
Yeah.
Okay. John, go ahead.
So, yeah, there has got to be, I understand this discussion about the vehicles, and I think that there's some places where we can get savings here. And the maintenance that the cost of maintenance on these vehicles as they get older is more expensive. It's basic maintenance, oil changes, brakes, those kinds of things in the early life of these vehicles. But then when we get into repairing diesel engines and more sophisticated electrical things and welding and rebuilding bodies, that's just incredibly expensive to maintain vehicles that are beyond their useful life. So I really support us getting aligned so that we are cycling through things earlier, and we're not going to be able to do that all at once. But there have got to be other places in this budget besides just looking at vehicles where we can get some savings. And what I'm looking at here more than anything is, John, if you could scroll up a little bit on your spreadsheet, we are at, this is what it's ultimately going to come down to our taxpayers. Right now, we are at a 6.25% increase in property taxes, assuming there's no additional monies coming from the state. And we've got to get to some, we can sit and go line by line on all of this and debate every line in the budget. But I think we should try to coalesce, if we can, somewhere around what this is ultimately going to mean to people's pocketbooks. Because I don't know what people's expectations are. I'm not sure we're going to get that to zero. So it's going to be somewhere above that. And I think it might be helpful for us to sort of start with the end in mind, at least a target range that we can then try to say, okay, this is what we've got to find in the budget. That's my thought on this, because I feel like we're getting into a level of granularity And I don't feel comfortable having operational discussions about how the police department should conduct its business. I would rather say this is the number you have to work with, and this is what we have to align around. That's just my 2 cents here.
Okay. Thank you, John. Carol?
So I had a question back on the lease that I didn't get to ask. So can you point on what page in this budget book, Matt? I have the notebook one, not the one you handed me today. So I'm looking in CIP and under the
Not gonna find.
under the vehicle replacement page,
Oh, because-
one.
Yeah, because it's a lease, it's going to be, and I don't know if someone can be.
I can't hear you.
It's
We're
not in
working on
the
it.
CIP, he's looking for it right now,
No.
because it's a lease.
Okay, so
Right.
we've got on page one. Go
So
ahead.
page 78,
Of the white budget book.
of the one that not the one I gave you today.
Okay,
So page 78, which is non-departmental charges, debt service, there's a line that says lease payments.
okay,
And you'll see that in the 2027 department, that number was going to be 864,000. The proposed is 1.36, which is 500 more. Because it's a lease, that's where we would account for it through.
so we have under, it says revised 2026. That's what the department's ask was 864. It says revised 1,025,000.
No, you're going the wrong way. The proposed to the right,
Okay, so the proposed is,
1.364.
so 1,300,000, and is that for what leases, Matt? Is that for all leases? Because we just talked about a $500,000 a year lease. So what is the 1.3 for?
What's the current leases?
We have a couple leases. We have like the energy performance lease that was approved at referendum in 2014. That was like I don't want to say 10 or 15 year lease. That was all the equipment that we put in the school and the town buildings and schools and everything. Then we have the, there were several, some of you will remember, we have been leasing equipment and vehicles previously. And we had some that were longer term. I think we had done a couple of trash trucks and dump trucks, and some of those were like 7 years, and those are running off, so we have the remaining payments on those. I could look, if I go to look up exactly what they are, Carol, I'll end up screwing up what's on the screen here, so.
Don't do that. So then under the capital piece, if you go to the CIP budget, there's 2 million in fleet requests,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
That is minus the 500 for the lease, which equals
No.
2 million.
No,
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 2 million.
No.
So
separate line
Oh,
item.
oh.
That's why I asked.
is in-
Go ahead, Carol.
I asked the question, it's not under that line. So you've got another 2 million in CIP.
And that's accounting for the police as well as the remainder of what DPW has for the light duty vehicles.
To purchase, not to lease.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, okay. All right. So that lease number on page 78 includes vehicles as well as the electrical lease that we got in 2 years ago. Correct?
Yeah, whatever previously you've leased is in that number,
Okay,
plus the 500,000 for the vehicles.
okay, okay. All right. Thank you. That was my question. And I do agree to a degree with what John was saying. I think we won't have a real contribution to your answer, John, until we caucus tomorrow or Friday. I've lost track of days. So we can probably give you a more accurate description of an answer to that once we meet. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. I mean, you guys can caucus whenever you want. Caucusing with only 2 days of budget deliberations left is tough, but, okay. Did you, Marie?
I have some questions on the actual public works
Okay,
in the book.
all right, perfect. So
Nothing to do with.
do
parks.
we have anything else we want to discuss regarding the vehicles right now? I think we're comfortable. All right, so we have a consensus from my understanding is what's up on the board right now. All right, perfect.
Thanks.
Do you, maybe about 15 or so more minutes? Marie, if you can,
Yeah, I've got it all highlighted.
okay, so we're good to go. Donald, are you good? You may not have every answer, but he's gonna maybe have some questions.
I went through the book because that's how I do the budget. I don't. So I'm gonna start on page 54.
Thank you. That's a lot.
Yeah, and if you go down to 53, where it says other professional services. Last year's budget was $25,000 and that's jumping up to $84,800. Why is it it's 63, almost $64,000? Why the increase?
So that's your MSW,
Okay, so that's the,
MS or
okay, so that's a mandatory thing that we can't change. That's,
you haven't been doing it. It's mandatory, but you haven't been doing it.
okay, all right, that's my question. So, on the next page, 55, the $95,000 for the environmental health and safety coordinator.
It's not funded.
It's not funded, that's what
That
you're
was,
asking.
that was requested, but I did not fund it.
Okay. Now, if we go to page 57. So last year, looking at the salaries, there's an increase there of like
So
$420,000.
that is made up of, one, the increases based upon the collective bargaining agreement,
Okay,
plus the crew leader for the trades,
And the trade.
so the new position.
the new position.
Okay, I just want clarification.
Yep.
So it's the way I have, my brain works.
What page was that on, you said?
57.
57, because there's $1,310,000 over of where it was for last year. So those are some big numbers that would fly out to me.
Some of the other things on that, just to address that, is electricity.
I see that.
It was budgeted 1.3 million this year. You're going to be at 1.7, 1.8 this year.
Right, no, and I see that.
And so there's things in here that I increase based upon what we're really going to do.
Well, development, if you go down on that page on 57, if you go to 53, where it's professional development, in the past, we've spent $500 and it's going up to 11,820. Big number, big jump.
So that's based upon our safety programs that we need to be implementing and the training we need to be doing.
Okay. And other purchase services, 56, we paid 2,300 last year, that's jumping up to 25,000. So 55, other purchase services, what are we doing? What services are we purchasing?
Yeah, I don't have my.
So if you look at other purchase
One
services,
second.
I see where.
On 55.
Right, on 55. Last year it was $2,360. Yeah, it's on page 57, but if you go to line item 55, other purchase services,
We gotta find what division that is. I think.
we go from 2,360 up to 25,000. That's a big number.
Repeating.
From services.
Other purchase services.
Yep, so that is, fertilization.
That's
Fertilizer
fertilizer.
for the fields.
Newer fields.
It went up $23,000.
We haven't done it.
Because I don't think we've been fertilizing our fields.
Well, but honestly and truly, we just spent all that money for that company to come in and do all the irrigation with the little divots and everything.
Yeah, that's irrigation. That's not fertilization.
That's a lot. That to me blows my mind. That's a huge number. Huge,
Well,
huge.
you know how much grass you maintain?
Yeah, a lot.
Well,
We have-
why
I
all
think
of a
it's
sudden
on-
did
I
it
think
go
it's on
up?
one of their,
Because we haven't done it.
Well, I mean, obviously it goes back. I mean, I got my budget book backs from 4 years ago.
And if they have done it, they probably paid it.
All right, we've done. We've got more. I know electricity is fine. I get that. There was another one here. Oh, supplies and materials. It's like it's a whole new line item. And again, that's $25,000. What are those supplies?
What page, what line?
Same set, 57, line 58, or 50, yeah, 56, 56.
56.
Yeah, I mean, that we had zero, and it's like it's a whole new line item.
Something else we haven't been doing.
I think we've been buying.
do you know?
Give me
I
one
know that
second.
first one.
Oh,
Don't move on yet. Let's let
Hang
Matt
on.
answer the question.
Matt Donald has.
The other purchase services on the B and G 5500 or 55000 was, we're taking over the fire and burglary alarm monitoring. We're taking that back from IT and putting it in our.
Oh.
So it's clear.
Oh, so
And then so the fertilizer is the one
It's
you're
not-
looking at right now. Yep. So the first one you were talking about is the fire one. the one you're
We're
talking
taking
about.
we're gonna take back the monitoring and put it on DPW.
Okay,
Yep.
so
Thank
Let's
you.
talk.
we never fertilized in the past, ever. We've done nothing for
Very,
fields.
very,
Shit's expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
You get a whole grant.
Okay, and I have another one. All right, the healthcare, I get that because if you've got new employees added into it and stuff. And the other one was machinery on page 59. Under property, under line item 57, we went from $6,800, we're going up to $44,000 on machinery. What machinery is that?
New robots.
No.
Okay. That's good. Do we know what that machine?
I'm looking at them
Oh,
now.
I'm sorry. No, take your time. Tom.
I'm on Munis, I gotta. So this is for, 6 floor burnishers and wet dry vacs
And that's not in CIP?
and upright vacs, your operating costs.
So, but is it CIP that we're gonna, that machinery is not in CIP?
No, it's not capitalized.
Okay, but so it's just miscellaneous machinery you need to maintain schools, but we don't have like a printout of what that is. Okay. And then the other question I had on that same page is under,
We do have that, and I can get it for you.
okay. The other one I have is under personal services and salaries. So it looks like in 2026, our revised overtime really did jump up way over what we anticipated. So now you're proposing it to go down into what it was in 2026. Is that because you're looking to hire new people, you're gonna have less overtime? Is that where that balance is? I just want to
Yep.
verify it. I
Yep.
just need to.
Yep.
I have to understand things when I read up, so I just want to make sure I'm right. So
We're not only adding new people, but we're all, in terms of full-time, because we've already added 3 like this year, 2 next year, plus we're funding the temporary seasonal.
I see that and I'm okay with that,
More people.
but
We are full, by the way.
Good.
It's,
Awesome.
yeah, thrilled.
okay. All right, you answered my questions, but
Perfect. Do you have DPW thing? All right, 5 minutes. All right.
Quickly.
Were you able to get an answer on how much of the general fund is subsidizing specific items at the transfer station?
Did you get that to me?
Yes, I did.
Apparently I have it and I didn't know I had it.
Okay.
We'll get it to you.
Okay, if you give me a few seconds here. Hold on.
Was that your one and only?
Well, yeah, so I would kind of go from, that was my question. My comment to it is I think kind of going into what the deputy mayor was not going into granularity is I think it would be a benefit for the council to no longer subsidize people who use beyond regular trash service. And I think pulling money out of the general fund for a service that most people don't utilize doesn't make sense. And when the service was originally provided, the fees corresponded with what it costs to run the dump, and that is no longer the case. So I'd like to see a reduction from the general fund to accommodate that.
Meaning you want to up the fees? Is that what you're saying? How are you
I
suggesting?
would want the amount that we're putting into it to be reduced to level it out. So whatever the fees are covering is what I would like the council to provide. And then the fee portion can be addressed in subcommittee.
I don't know how that happens, but okay.
Well, we just need to see what the revenues are right now versus the cost.
Yeah.
And then the delta is the increase that we would then have council adopt as the new rates.
Great, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a rate thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
That's
that's
what I
correct.
asked.
That's a rate issue.
Yes, so it's a rate issue. Yes. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking. I thought you gave me a
Yeah.
different answer, Zach. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it just, and I think to, Councilor Matthews' point and the point of revenue, I think it's a benefit when talking big picture policy points for the council when looking at this budget is to start recognizing what are core services that people that need to have, that we fund and take care of them, services that we all benefit from. And I think services that people elect to choose and have, we need to reduce the general fund contributions for. So that's my comment with Public Works.
Right. I think that that's something that DPW subcommittee can look at. Yeah. Go ahead.
So that was, if I may,
Don,
Yeah.
that's the right question.
to answer your question, I always ask to get the salary portion of it, and that is $349,414.09. That's for the 3 transfer stations. That's salary benefits, everything.
So that's for the cost of the transfer station.
That's for the employees.
Salary.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out how much we're getting in fees for it. You have this number, so we know the difference.
You're gonna have to break that out. So I can get that.
Okay, because that's what I would like to have a conversation about removing from the general fund contribution budget.
Okay.
2 staffing questions. One on page 55, assistant director of public works. I think I'm just trying to get a clarification. You've got.
The assistant director is, well, now informally Ken Billett's, position that handles RRM and it handles highway. I have one person handles both divisions.
Okay. Because you've got a deputy and then you've got the assistant.
Yep, that's been.
And then on page 60, assistant head custodian, is he everyone? Am I reading that correctly?
Right.
It's JFK and high school.
Yeah, the larger schools, will have an assistant.
That's the second shift that people that handle.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's
Okay.
It's different than the crew leader. So.
All right, thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Did you say you had
Super quick.
CW? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so I brought this up at, like 2 meetings ago, and I'm gonna bring it up again. I appreciate the sentiment of custodial services having all new matching uniforms for 21K, but I think that needs to be deferred for this year. I don't think we need that in this budget. And that's all I got.
I'll agree. That's,
Negative.
okay, uniforms?
Yeah,
And how much was that?
21,000.
21,000?
Gotta
gonna wear them anyway.
Contract, there might be an obligation.
Okay,
Yeah, then let's
All right.
find it for cheaper.
find that
A
out,
lot of money.
and then,
Reach the contract, that's all.
yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, it probably is. I think it's another one of those things that they said that we weren't doing.
Oh.
But we haven't gotten in trouble for it yet, and I think we got enough going on this year.
We have provided them sweatshirts and shirts, but not the actual formal ones that everybody else.
Like the
Because they're
collar shirt or
different,
whatever.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Steve, you can get us that, information, and then, I do have one or two, suggestions and comments about the trades. I will deal with that in thoughts about the trades position. I will deal with that on Wednesday when we are back. All right, so it is 8:01. We're gonna put a pin in this. Do you have the, yes, go ahead.
Just another potential savings.
Yes,
So this budget contemplates a special referendum.
yes, which
So if we're not going to do that.
it's gonna happen.
We can take out, and I included a sheet that has the gray marks on it, Cindy, you'd asked me about.
It's sitting down here like me.
There's. Somewhere right here. There's, 23,696 we can reduce.
Yeah.
Out of the ROD and county clerk side.
Yes.
lines, If we do that.
Because the referendum's happening in November.
The only thing with that though is would you plan if it doesn't pass November?
To do it
again?
Yeah, so maybe it stays in.
So just something to think about, we don't have to act on it, but I just wanted to.
Okay, so Wednesday, we will have the chief here, so it would make some of these nights go quicker. If you have questions, please email them to your leadership or to Matt and CCS. That way they can come with the answers to the questions that you have. I wish Bruce could tell that. That way they have the answers and they don't have to flip through the book to not have them and say they have to get back to you. I understand we all like come up with questions at the last minute, which is totally fine. But if you know you have a dozen questions for the PD, for the chief, please email them ahead of time so we can have a more fruitful conversation about it. And I think it'll be a little more efficient on that. So come with your ideas. It does not have to just be limited to PD and DPW. On Wednesday, we are here at 6 o'clock. And any other questions, comments? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion. Oh, motion made by Lori, seconded by Linda. All in favor?
I missed what you
All
were
right,
doing.
we're adjourned.